In the prayers of Holy Fathers, Lord Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us and save us. Amen.
Amen.
Good evening, everybody. This is, it's of course NFTU Orthodox News and Orthodox News and Apologetics, and I'm touching on a subject that we have not touched in a few months. It was a series I actually wanted to start, and so I had been talking to Father Antonios here on basically on various subjects, but this is one that we definitely wanted to talk about. So today, first off, I'd like to introduce Father Antonios. If you could say a few words about yourself, and many of the group knows you.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say. Priest in the Metropolia as well, under Metropolitan John. I've been a priest for 10 years now, I think.
About there, yeah, I remember.
Yeah. And here down in South Texas, near Brownsville, right on the border, St. John of Kronstadt is our mission. Just faithfully trying to slowly spread the word of orthodoxy, as they say.
Well, praise God, that's awesome. So I will give kind of an intro about what we're doing here. So we had talked about we've talked about various things over the past few months. And one of the things that comes up, and this is very interesting, is the nature of the current economy. And I know that sounds a bit off topic, but one of the reasons that this whole series, or the planned series anyway, is important is because, quite frankly, we are surrounded by doomsayers. We're increasingly surrounded by people who are getting more and more apocalyptic. And there is nothing wrong. Believing in the end is a normal thing. Everyone can and should, because we want Jesus to come back. But we don't need to force his hand. And so the point is, one of the things that scares people a lot is, quite frankly, just the economy. And so there's a reason for that. If you get on YouTube or any social network, and it's just a nonstop line of depression about how bad things are going. I was watching a video that just came out a couple of weeks ago that was talking about a baseline, using McDonald's as a baseline in terms of the prices and how the poor are effectively being priced out of existence. What we're going to talk about today kind of ties into that, because we're going to talk about, well, money. And in talking about that, we're going to get right into it's a topic that's near and dear to your heart, Father. I've noticed that on Twitter, you're kind of quite the advocate for cryptocurrency. And so we were going to talk a little about that. First off, for those who are not familiar or pretend to be familiar but are really not familiar, what is crypto?
Yeah, well, first off, I should say, usually anytime cryptocurrency comes up, people start asking about investing and that sort of thing. And
yeah,
you should get that disclaimer right off the bat, right? I'm not a financial advisor. I know NFTU doesn't offer financial advice, so
no.
Take everything with a grain of salt. And it's not the intention of what we're talking about is any kind of investment. For me, when we're looking at cryptocurrency, when I perhaps is just give a little bit of my journey here. You see the world, just like you said, there's a lot of doomsdayers out there and a lot of negative Nancy's, so to speak, and it can be a little bit disheartening. And as it does continue to march down the road towards the Antichrist, which is inevitable. Oh yes, I should give a shout out that Gabriella, she's my daughter. She's a second lieutenant in the Civil Air Patrol and is headed to her squadron along with Master Sergeant Altermatt, my second son,
wow,
for their meeting this evening. So God bless you guys. And
they were all so small when I saw them.
I know, it grows fast. And even when we had these lockdowns here not long ago, we saw them trying to restrict the use of cash. There was coin shortages and these sorts of things, and continuing to push us towards using digital means, right?
Cashless society.
Say again?
Oh, cashless society, central bank digital currencies.
Right, exactly. Sorry, sometimes it's hard for me to hear. Don't ask me why.
I'll see what
Anyway, even with
you were
that,
saying.
yeah, people can get real scared and nervous regarding this idea of the digital society and the cashless society, and it's understandable. We know it's coming at some point in the future. It's going to be here, and it will be the Antichrist system, but it is not here today. And while we see incremental steps being put into place to get there, we're not there. And even as they're rolling out these CBDCs, which are scary, I'm no fan, and I don't know anyone who is, and I don't want anything to do with them if I have a choice. As far as I have a choice, at least in my personal life, even those are not, the final one world currency, because those are going to be divided up amongst different nations. So during that time period, it was around 2020. I was looking for, and I've always been I'm one of those. I'm an old duffer now, and always been into precious metals and things. So I've always had that sort of ethos about me with the barter and this sort of thing. And when I saw these things happening, it made me realize that as much of I am a self-professed Luddite, I'm not a big tech guy, but I had to do something because when the day comes when they decide to squeeze, and they will, to one degree or another, and it may be isolated in certain areas or another, but it's inevitable. At that moment, it's too late to learn, right?
Yeah.
And so what my intention is to, how do you live within the system, which, by the way, is not the Antichrist system, right? Within the system that's provided for us.
Give me a second. My dog is acting really weird towards me right now. I don't know if you can hear the growling.
I did.
Okay, I don't know what I did, but okay, she apparently wants to eat some fuzzy item. Okay, go ahead.
Of course. Is how do you continue to live in the world, because we still have to pay taxes, we still have to buy groceries, we still have to do these things, and yet prepare ourselves in a wise manner, and everyone's different, and it's not advice, it's not spiritual advice to anyone, or it's just practical advice, how to live in this world and be prepared, perhaps for the inevitable, because we have to look at things historically. Right? If they had this sort of technology in the Soviet Union or in Greece in the 20s, 30s, and onward, with the persecution of the old calendars and such, if they had the ability to lock up your funds, right, your bank accounts, to know what you're purchasing, who you're sending money to, that's the danger, right? Is that they will know absolutely everything, every dime, every penny that we spend. And where it's going to, who we're giving it to, including churches, right? So if you look at it in a historical sense, and you're giving to your church and you're using a digital currency, well, they're going to know what church you're giving to. And if that church becomes, don't want to say persona non grata, but illegal, let's just use the simple term, right?
It's a perfectly valid term, especially after the pandemic stuff.
Yeah, it becomes illegal. Well, now you're a person of interest, right? And a lot of people, I know, get a little carried away with these sorts of things, and they think they're going to become, a spook or something, or that's what you're talking about, which it isn't. No one's doing anything that's illegal or unethical. It's just what we've always done since there was money, right? Is transacting with another person privately in an exchange of goods. Are we good so far?
Yeah. I'm really just more confused.
So the idea is, I think, to a certain degree, is to prepare ourselves, again, in a wise way, not in a fearful, panicky way, to exist in a less than friendly environment, right? So I see this sort of, if you want to call it anything, is a hedge against tyranny.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in that journey, I thought, like, probably everyone, you jump in and you get something like Bitcoin or whatever, and because of the rhetoric that goes around these projects, you think you're dealing with something that's a relatively private or anonymous technology. And when you dive deeper into them, you realize it's far from the truth, especially if you're using anything like a centralized exchange or something like that. It's totally, transparent technology. It's an open ledger.
Yeah. Now, because I realize that once we're talking about open ledgers, we're going a little bit deeper, and so just to keep the audience in in the loop, one thing that I wanted to introduce, and this is kind of for anyone who knows, has a knowledge of cryptocurrency, the first thing people think of is Bitcoin. And so just to give an idea, because I do want to present this because I found it one of the most interesting things about Bitcoin when it first came out, and that's the Genesis block. Now, the reason why I bring this up is a Genesis block is basically the first block on a blockchain. So every crypto has a Genesis block, but Bitcoin's the first one. Came out in basically January 3rd, 2009, which would have been right after would have been around the inauguration of Barack Obama. For those who aren't familiar, it was also the middle of a financial bailout globally for a group of banks. And actually, in the Genesis block was coded the words, "The Times, 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks." Now, this is important to note because one thing to point out is that the very origin of cryptocurrency itself was that it was meant to protect people against the predatory actions of banks. So it ties directly into the battles we're having now.
Yes.
So that's one thing that I do want to keep in mind. Now, what Father Antonios is referring to here is that Bitcoin, while designed to basically be it's designed around math, as almost all cryptos are. The idea is that it's designed to be used as a currency that is freely exchangeable without the need for a middleman, an issuing bank. So it has a limited
Originally.
Originally, exactly. Yeah. And so this is what it was in the beginning, but there's more that's happened since. And this is why Father Antonios mentioned public ledgers. If you could go into a little bit more detail on what you mean by that, because I'm sure most people think crypto is anonymous, drug dealers use it, so on and so forth. So maybe give a little more background on what a public ledger is and what the difference is.
I am not a coder, and right. I'm not a software engineer or and nothing like that. So as far as the details are concerned, I won't be able to give anyone any good answers. But the long and short of it is, if you buy something, everyone's familiar with Coinbase if they know crypto. If you buy Bitcoin on crypto, you're essentially buying it. Well, it's a custodial relationship, right? So it's like a bank. They have your social security number. They've got your driver's license number. They know who you are.
Right.
And once that's on there, even if you move it away, the ledger itself isn't obfuscated in any way. So when you move it to another wallet, even if it's self-hosted, they know you sent it, from yours, and they know who you are to another wallet. And there's dangers in that. And we saw some of those dangers even in with the trucker protests in Canada, where they were shutting people's bank accounts down and people were sending Bitcoin, and there was confiscations and things like that because it's public, it's open. And obviously, this is not the kind of technology you want if you're living in an adversarial environment. So I quickly, I ended up on Twitter. I had an account from 2009 or 10 that I never used. I tested it and didn't like it and left. But there was actually a silver investor that I enjoyed, and that's the only way I could get his I guess you say news
updates
news
or things like
that.
Yeah.
And so I popped back on, and that's how I ended up bumping into the Monero community. And that's sort of sent me on a whole different journey, thank God, and a good one. A lot of good people, and the technology is amazing. But it's truly, a lot of people saying kind of tongue in cheek, but it's true. Monero's what Bitcoin, maxis think they were buying, right? It truly is a private. That word is tricky. Private is a tricky word, but essentially it is a private cryptocurrency where if I have Monero in my wallet and I send it to Father Joseph, no one knows except for him and me. We've got the transaction keys and that's it. And then when he sends it on to someone else, there's no record of it. Or with your Bitcoin, if I send it to Father Joseph and Father Joseph, totally innocent, I give him a donation and he goes and I don't know, he saves up and he buys a car, right, with his Bitcoin, and then that guy who he bought the car from ends up in a drug deal, right? These things can be traced back, and now someone becomes a person of interest over something that has nothing to do with them, which is dangerous. I'm oversimplifying, and someone will probably yell
No,
at
but
me,
it makes sense.
but essentially that's what we're talking about. We want something that's literally digital cash, that when I hand you a $10 bill, no one knows where that $10 bill's been, and no one knows where it's going, and we don't care, right? It's a $10 bill. And so that's essentially what is accomplished with Monero.
Well, yeah, definitely. It's worth noting because most recently, in a lot of the crypto spaces, they've been talking about Bitcoin mixers. But now those mixers are under legal scrutiny.
Mm-hmm.
So you could run into trouble just trying to keep your Bitcoin stuff anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is kind of the reason why, using a more anonymous currency makes sense in the same way that using cash makes sense. There's always going to be risk, but the more you can mitigate, the better it is.
Yeah.
And this is something that, I think a lot of people should seriously consider.
What you do with your cash, as far as, you take your $300 out and go buy groceries, what you buy is no one's business. Whether it's hamburger or noodles or whatever,
Yeah.
It's no one's business. And that's what that's I don't want to call it fear. That's the reality of what's coming with the CBDC, right? And
yeah, I mean, ultimately,
control.
we're seeing what the problems that began with the universal product code system now in like massive relief, because that was a concern that even when the code became more popular in the, probably the early to mid 1980s, scanning things, all of these were kind of, there were people who talked about how the UPC symbol, and people on Esfigmento still believe this, was a type of the mark of the beast. And people still, even now, laugh at it until they go down the rabbit hole and realize that the guy who invented the UPC purposely put 666 in every UPC. So, the point is that what we're seeing now is considerably. What I do to you, dog? Seriously, I have like this small dog growling at me for no reason, and
it's a small dog. That's what they do.
It's the weirdest thing. I just don't want her near me.
Yeah, and therein lies the other side of that danger, right? There's when we're looking at these technologies, is one getting so stuck on a single thing that it almost immobilizes you, right? And that you unplug from the system completely. And if you would have run away when passports, or how about your social security number, right? People thought social security numbers was the mark of the beast. If you unplugged from the system, then you missed the mark. I wouldn't have said you're wrong. By all means, go ahead and tells you. But that's why I was saying earlier, we're marching down that road, but this is not it, right? We're not there yet. But the fear with continuing to go down the road is that, I hate to use the boiling frog because we all know it's not true anymore, but that you get accustomed to it, and before long, it doesn't even matter anymore, and you just walk right into the system, right? That's ultimately what's going to happen. So it's sort of that wise as serpents, harmless as doves, right? We just want to walk through this process prayerfully and wisely, I think, because we know the reality.
And that is ultimately the problem, is that when you're talking about these things as types of the mark, it's really just a question of how much society is willing to take in terms of how close they'll get to just putting up their hands and saying, tattoo me. I hate to say that, but that is kind of, how close we're getting to things like this. But now the question is, what can we do about it? And that's part of where, things like Monero and come into play, because ultimately they do actually, keeping some of your money in crypto is a great way of making sure, as long as it's a stable crypto. You mentioned at the very beginning crypto as investment, and of course with the disclaimers there, crypto shouldn't be an investment. And what I mean by that is that it's meant to be used as a currency. And if it's jumping up in value randomly to an extremely high degree, that means that either A, the crypto is in a bubble, or B, the currency you live with is in serious, serious trouble. So neither of these are particularly good reasons. They're not good reasons to invest per se. I mean, as a speculator, but they're good reasons to have your money in a different form. You can only hold a certain amount, for example, of foreign currency. At least in the U.S., I'm pretty sure there are limits on how much foreign currency you can physically hold. While I don't think there are limits on gold and silver. Gold and silver can get hard to transport. Even 10 ounces of silver it's a weight. It's like, almost, it's heavy, and so it's problematic. The beauty of crypto is ultimately it doesn't have a weight, so it's closer to paper, but there are other issues. Now, here's an example. I'm going to bring this up because I know people often think of it. What can you do with it? Like, let's say somehow you get your hands on some Monero. I'm asking this, to you, even though I have, obviously I know some of the answers, but anyway, so like say for example, you gave, some person X, okay, you gave me some Monero. What can I do with it?
You'd probably, well, okay, I'll tell you what I do with it, right? Excuse me. Because I do, and then here again is the problem with sort of we talked about with Bitcoin and the ethos that happened there. It was originally a very cypherpunk, libertarian, anarcho-capitalistic sort of ethos, right?
Yep.
And then somewhere along the line, it became this numbers go up game, right? So they began to hodl, right, and hold on to it and not use it as cash. I'm sorry?
I said when Moon Lambo.
Exactly. Laser eyes and all the business. And that's really not what we want, right? That, like you said, and that's what you see with Monero too, is when you've got a whole group of people holding on to something, right? It kind of creates an artificial demand. And that's part of, and I'm not an economist, I'm disclaiming again, but that is clearly part of what goes on with some of these cryptos as they move up. Where what you watch with Monero historically now, if you look at the last year, is this stable? I mean, it was at $150 for a long time.
Yeah.
And then it got delisted, or as the Monero community likes to say, it delisted Binance. We saw that big fluctuation in there. It had a dip, and now we're back up to near 150 again. Because when you're using it, no one's squeezing, holding on to it, sort of squeezing that. You do create something that's a little more stable.
And I think that's another reason why, I hate to say it, but another reason why Bitcoin is so highly valued versus other coins is because now big banks, and this is something we haven't talked about, which was the very reason it was created, they're all over it.
ETFs, yeah.
ETFs. People are including it in baskets for investments. That's dangerous. That actually is the opposite of what it's supposed to be used for. So in some ways, the creation of alternatives exists to make things, frankly, easier for regular people to get in on it. And so, you don't have to worry about massive fluctuations like, I mean, let's face it, right now we're in the middle of a fluctuation with Bitcoin right now at 71,000. I don't think that's a price it's been at ever. I think it topped out around 2 years ago or 3 years ago at like 50,000. Then it crashed, like it went down to like 20. So, people who are thinking of buying that way, it could lead to disaster.
Yeah, well, I'm all for people doing whatever they want with their money as long as it's ethical. If that's what you want to do, and you want to, play the market, as they say, whatever. But that's not what I'm here for. I'm here for liberty and the freedom that it has to offer. Options, right?
This is an interesting question we've got here from Death to Compromise. How is digital currency accessed? Like for cash, how can one get it from an ATM at the bank? Sorry, wrong word. No, I think we understood you. It's fine, but ironically, you can get some. You can get some. You can. There are certain cryptos like Bitcoin and Litecoin that you could actually get from an ATM. But this
Monero as
leads.
well.
Yeah, well, I've never seen a Monero ATM, but that would be very handy because I assume it wouldn't. Well, that's the big problem with the ATM. If you go, as many of you may know, there are Bitcoin ATMs all over the world, including in the U.S., and 99.9% of them will ask you to place your ID in the ATM and scan it, and then it will check you against the ID that you put up, and then you can exchange crypto for cash and vice versa. Now you've identified yourself. So the whole point is, depending on how much you want to identify yourself in the transaction, it can be very easy or slightly more difficult to purchase crypto.
Mm-hmm.
If you're using Coinbase, it's like a traditional bank. They're regulated, chased down by the SEC constantly. But frankly, you're going to give them all your information.
Mm-hmm.
The whole point of anonymous digital currency is that you're trying to avoid that. So there are different ways to get access to that. Father, do you have any suggestions on this?
Well, I'm personally I'm not opposed to using a centralized exchange to acquire it. Like in the U.S. here, Kraken, you can still acquire Monero through Kraken. And the way to look at it there, like he said, Death to Compromise, I believe, asked the question, like an ATM. So when you deposit your money in the bank, like no one has a big problem with that. The bank knows you have it, right? It's there. You've got $10,000 in the bank. And when I go withdraw that $1,000 or whatever, they know I withdrew it, but they have no clue what I'm doing with it, right? That's the cash portion of the equation. Excuse me. So if you think of a centralized exchange more like the bank, and you put $1,000 whatever in it, and you buy your Monero, and then you move $500 of that ish into your self-custodied wallet, it's the same as taking it out of the bank. They know you had it, they know you withdrew it, but after that they have no clue, right? So personally, I'm not against that. It may be not ideal, but it is easy for people to get into, and it is an easy way to, just to acquire Monero and.
Now, one thing you mentioned the wallet, and I think that's something that we do need to talk about. There's a common phrase in crypto: not your keys, not your crypto.
Right.
And this has a specific meaning because a digital wallet usually has what are known as custodial keys. In some cases, it's anywhere from a 16 to 32 word passphrase, which you can then type into any generic wallet of the type of crypto you're buying, and your balance will show up. That wallet, because it's got that number, that information digitally stored.
Mm-hmm.
On an account like Coinbase, you don't get that because they're holding the wallet.
They're custodial. Yeah.
Right. And so that effectively what that means is somebody else is holding your money. Mm-hmm. Now there's the plus side to that is you don't need to have access to your money all the time. I wouldn't understand why somebody would do that with a virtual currency. It's not like it weighs anything. Mm-hmm. The downside is that in the past, there have been crypto exchanges that stole customers' money. Unfortunately, this has happened with banks as well. We all know about Sam Bankman-Fried and that stuff. So it doesn't have to just be cryptos. It can, FTX. It can be investment firms with physical money. So part of the reason that you want to have your own custodial wallet or your own wallet that is under your custody is that they'd have to hack your wallet, which is extremely difficult. Yeah. No.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not that guy but I don't know how that's possible. If you've got if you're self custody and you've got those keys and you don't have it saved on your phone or something, and you're not using some goofy, I don't know, internet wallet that.
Yeah, the only way that I understand that it can be done, when the technology is not there yet, and once it is, they're building, security into new wallets because what they say is that a certain level of quantum computer
Yeah,
will be able to do that. But by that point, they'll have created new forms of encryption.
right.
Death to Compromise asks, if you took out digital currency, what format does it come in? Is it a physical, tangible thing or purely digital like an online bank account? Well, it's kind of funny that you say that because it is purely digital, but there are people who get in the habit of creating what are known as paper wallets. And you can actually put
Old school.
money onto a paper wallet, hand it off to somebody, and say, here is one crypto coin worth this much. And once they scan that, they own that. So it's theirs. Let me see here. Rocco Redmond says, Father Anthony getting a feature finally. Congratulations. We're glad to have you on. I've been
My
beating that
arm
sweat
still
up
hurts
for
from the twisting.
All right. So yeah, definitely. You
Well,
do want
speaking of
to.
wallets, we should
Yeah.
bring those up. If you're gonna go in, get into it. And by the way, I have no problem. I think everyone I've seen you pull up. I don't have the YouTube in front of me, so I don't know who's there. But hit us up on Discord. That's fine. We can talk about it, and we can even help you. I can, whatever. Um, but if you're already familiar with crypto, or you have some on an XMR, let's say on Kraken, get it off those exchanges, put it into something like Cake Wallet, if you're an iOS user, or Monero, if you're Android. It's kind of an OG wallet. Those are both excellent wallets. Just make sure that you follow the instructions and write down that seed phrase. Don't take a picture of it and email it or something silly like that, but write it down and put it in your safe, or whatever you want to do with that. Laminate it and hide it away. But those products are great.
Absolutely. One thing that,
Oh,
yeah,
I think you asked me the question, what do you do with the crypto, right?
yes.
Well, personally, Monero for the win. Well, it's a hedge, right? I hope it helps. Well, right now it's the best technology we have, but it's not the only technology. There's a lot of them out there. We see, Vero and Dash and Beam, and there's any number of things, Pirate Chain, that all attempt to do the similar things. In the future, maybe something equally as good or better will come along, but right now there just isn't. And especially that's adopted. Monero is really used globally as digital cash. You can do it
Now, how do you
online.
spend the cash? I think would be like more of a question because people are like, okay, so I bought some. What do I do
Yep.
with it now?
There are markets online, not dark markets, normal markets that are set up just for Monero. Like there is Monero Market. You Google that, you can find it. You can buy all sorts of things on there. I personally buy my farm fresh eggs with Monero, or raw milk with Monero, some meat with Monero, maple syrup. I pay my SEO service with Monero. I think what else we buy. Coffee. I've got some of the best coffee from Gratuitas, even that you can buy with Monero. It's absolutely wonderful. I've bought books with Monero. Let me think. What else have I bought? Anyway, I use it for a lot of things. And donations. You use it to give donations to support projects that you believe in, or people, or what have you. It's really user friendly. It's very fast, and I haven't had a transaction cost me more than like 2 cents or something like that. I mean, it's
Wow.
crazy cheap.
Yeah.
Crazy cheap.
Well, one thing that I for one, I do have some Monero, and I keep Litecoin on the side as well. I have a BTC wallet, but I barely use it. But the point is that in my case, I remember you recommended to me, Father, a wallet called Cake Wallet.
Hmm.
Now, Cake Wallet is fantastic. I enjoy using this all the time. Yes, your Matishka said coffee, and frankly, I think half the chat felt that when you lifted up the bag there. They're just like, because
Yeah.
I've noticed that this crew loves talking about coffee. But
I was supposed to have a cup here, but I forgot to grab it before we came in.
I just got my water. But in any case, when you're using something like Cake Wallet, which is available on basically all major platforms from Windows to Linux to Android to iOS, the point is that you can actually create wallets of different currencies, including Monero. You can trade them for each other right in the wallet.
Hmm.
And then there's there's a card purchasing service, which is available in the US, where you can literally buy like a Visa gift card and use it for spending, or
Hmm.
Amazon, or I mean, so the point is you can just use it like that. If they don't want to do it direct, like do a direct crypto
Yeah.
to crypto exchange, you can just change it into something else.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Coin Cards, they do the same thing. If I remember right, I think that's the right company where you can buy.
Somebody has a separate question for you, Father. This was bound to happen. Finance aside, how did you find orthodoxy, especially the Metropolitan?
That is way off topic.
It
Uh,
is really off topic, but
do
people
you
are
want me to
interested.
go there, Father?
I mean, it's okay. I mean, it's up to you.
How about we wait till the end?
Okay. All right. So we'll wait till the end on that one, Roka Remnant. But in any case, and speaking of which, I have to respond to somebody's email too. Oh shoot. Okay, well, I'll get to that. I totally forgot about it. But so yeah, there's different ways that you can use it for literal spending,
Yeah.
saving, etc. But the most important part is that I hate to be so blunt, but it's not controlled by an external authority.
Yes.
So that is something that is very important. Just like um, no one can control what you do with a physical dollar, that will change. I don't know if
Yeah.
you saw this recently, but in China, over the past couple of years, they had been talking about creating social credit scores. And they
Yeah.
did do it. They actually did create social credit scores, and people were predicting and saying, and they were saying, well, now that if there's a social credit score, they can restrict you from certain items if you don't meet the score. And people were like, that's insane. They'd never do that. But just 3 months ago, it came out that certain vending machines in the CCCP, you can't purchase from them if your social credit score is too low.
Yeah.
So that's what happens with um, that's what happens. When you're dealing with a centralized currency. Now, this is an interesting question. Roka Remnant asks: is trading crypto less risky than forex or stocks?
Absolutely not.
No, it's not less risky. What you're looking for if you're into purchasing crypto is, as I mentioned, if you're keeping it as a store of value, you really want to stick with the most stable coins that are out there. Um, Unfortunately, I mean, the most stable coins are unfortunately the ones that are pegged to the dollar, but those are usually not privacy oriented coins to begin with.
Well, those wouldn't be an investment anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But if you're trading cryptos, it's like trading foreign currencies or stocks. There's no way to predict it.
Do
So I
your own
mean,
research. I mean, it is like any investment, and I mean, I do like to invest. So you you really need to do your homework.
yeah.
Yeah, because
I will
there
tell.
have been a lot of rug pulls. It can be very risky.
I will tell a story. I know that about 5 years ago, there was a coin that was actually based off Monero early on called Electronium. They were advertised it as the first British cryptocurrency, and a whole bunch of people were in on it. I jumped in on it too. My family did. Of course, I'm the type of person who, as soon as I see something that is a big enough jump, I'll get off the boat before other people do. So I saw it go up in about 6 hours. I'm like, this is bubble mania. Sell it now. And I ended up, I made like a 200, like a closer to a 1,600% return on it, which wasn't bad, but I knew it wasn't going to last. And within 2 to 3 weeks, it had halved in value. Within 6 months, it had halved again in value. And we had bought it at, I think, like 10 cents each, or a penny each for each one. Its current value now, with the sudden rise in crypto, is a little over half a penny. But if you came in from the very beginning, you now had half the money that you had when you started. So it's a risk. That's why you want to stick with things that are stable. That's what I tell people. But there are some people who do it for a living. There are crypto day traders, but I'm not one of them. But let me see here. I don't see any other questions here. So, other things to touch upon related to the subject, Father?
No, if if you're interested in the subject, like I said, get on Discord. We can talk and NFT you there. If you're a reader, there's a few books that are really good. Mastering Monero, which you can probably buy any of these with Monero if you really wanted to. The first half of it is really friendly. It gives you the basics, and the second half is extremely technical. I don't know if you can see it or not, but code and that sort of thing, which is way over my head. The second half I might as well not even have read because it didn't sink in. Something that's much easier, I think, for a lot of people, and it touches on economics and all sorts of things, is this one, the Monero Standard, as well. And again, you can buy these with Monero. And Michael Fitzgerald, he's on Twitter. He's the Stoic. He's stoic.xmr is his handle. I think you can go to @masteringmonero on Twitter as well. This is there. Sir Hack is the gentleman who wrote it. He's on Twitter. So if you're on Twitter and you like that, you can find these guys there. If we talked about investing. If you're interested in crypto and you want to know more about crypto, I'd recommend listening to Just Crypto on YouTube. Vanessa Harris. She does an absolutely fantastic job of breaking down technology. She's extremely intelligent and well-versed in these things. She's also on Twitter as the Technology Poet. So, yeah,
we got a comment I don't quite understand. You may be more knowledgeable in this than I. Said Robert Edward Grant sold me some Crown Sovereign, which is supposedly unshakable, but it's nearly ATM 2019. I don't know what Crown Sovereign is. I don't know if that's a crypto. I don't know.
All I know is the gold coins from England.
Possibly.
Sovereigns.
Okay. Well, gold and silver are pretty solid investments to begin with.
Well, I don't, in all of this, you can invest, and this is why I say there's no financial advice here. You can invest and make money in just about anything in the world, if you're smart enough and put enough effort into it and have risk tolerance. But that's not what it's about to me. Gold and silver is sort of a hedge against inflation. To me, things like Monero are a hedge against tyranny, and then they work hand in hand. They're very similar.
Okay, I see. Crown Sovereign is it's a utility token. Tokens, just for clarification, the difference between tokens and coins in the blockchain world is that tokens operate off of another blockchain. So they are something that's monetized through another blockchain, usually the Ethereum blockchain, whereas coins have their own blockchain. It's a non-hackable crypto against quantum computers. Well, technically, it's we'll see. This is ultimately the ultimate test is reality when it comes to these technologies. If people are claiming that there's going to be a technology that can break this cryptography, and of course, there's people on the other side trying to work against it. It's just a matter of seeing what can be done. I mean, ultimately, it's possible to rob a bank. There's no guarantees in life in that sense.
Yeah.
But
well, and going back to that too with Monero, another positive is the IRS has had a bounty on it for years. I don't know what it's at. Is it 600,000? Not sure. And
wow.
it's never been cracked. The people behind it are brilliant and tireless, and I really appreciate their work. It's a great community.
Cool. All right. Well, we're hitting the 45-minute mark. And so basically, if you have any questions about the subject, or if you have any questions you want to ask Father Antonius directly, we'll be here till the top of the hour. Did you want me to get back to that first question that we had there? Or?
I certainly can answer it.
Okay.
I can give you the nickel version, I hope. How did I find orthodoxy? It was honestly through studying church history. I was in school as a Protestant for the ministry, and it was in the study of church history where, sum it up, I'm reading these stories about people I'd never heard of, number one, as a Protestant, who were clearly holier than I could ever hope to be, reading books that were not in my canon of the scriptures and quoting them as if they were scripture. And it kind of, part of that challenged that sola scriptura doctrine that you have in Protestantism. And truth is, once that goes, everything falls, right? You really can no longer be a Protestant, at least not an evangelical style Protestant, without sola scriptura. So that started the journey, and it was about a 7-year journey, and that started in the late 90s. We didn't have these sorts of things then, and there was no Discord or anything available to us. So it was a long, slow journey, reading the fathers and that sort of thing, and until we finally were received. I was received into the OCA originally, and through a whole number of reasons, which I don't want to belabor the point with, world orthodoxy, but the things in ecumenism and everything, when you're standing there holding a cloth and monophysites, condemned, synodally condemned heretics are being communed, the fear of God kind of sets in. And, that took a number of years, but eventually we just had to make a move. It was just not sustainable. And if anyone has more questions, you can ask, but I don't want to drag this out. How we ended up with the Metropolia, put it in a nutshell. I remember the first NFTU broadcasts. We were actually in Brazil, I think in 2011. Is that right, Father, when they first started?
Yeah, around then, yes.
Yeah. And I even remember one with the original one with Father Anastasios on it, and that was a great interview. And of course, he went to St. Vlad's, which we were coming from the OCA at that time, so that really struck home. And so that sort of started my journey in earnest towards true orthodoxy, I would say. And my wife eventually reached out because we had finally left. Because I was a subdeacon at the time. They wanted me to become a deacon, and you know how that goes. Once you're a deacon, you're kind of handcuffed, and I knew it'd be infinitely harder to do anything. And there is no fighting within. That doesn't work. If you've been there, it's not a reality. And so we quietly slinked away, as it were. And my wife reached out to Father Joseph, actually, and Father Joseph put me in touch with Vladika John. We were in contact for about a year or so until we made our pilgrimage, I guess you'd say, to the monastery in New Jersey, and we were received. So that's the short version.
I should add, for the record, I had no idea up until a few months ago. I had no clue. All right, now this is going to be a bit of a hard question, and by hard I don't mean hard as in intelligence-wise, but psychologically. It's a series of posts, it looks like, and Lycurgo says, "How do we connect Christ to the theogony? It is the central question of being a Hellene, or a Greek." And he says, "How can we connect to our glorious past without destroying it? Because I believe that is a lie to want to destroy the ancients. Either Jesus is the demigod son of Zeus or another explanation. I'm looking for the other one. Gnostics have a way of," I assume he's going to finish, And I say this is going to be a really difficult question, and I mean, Father may have a different way of expressing it, but I tend to be almost rude when I try to be direct. Um, the Theogony is the 8th to 10th century BC description of the birth of the gods. It is a pagan text. While there have been some useful things written by pagans, pre-Christian pagans on philosophy, for example, there is nothing holy about paganism. Just as I would refer to voodoo, just as I would refer to African or Asian superstition, paganism is Satanism in some way, shape, or form. The early Christians, from the beginning of the church, and we're talking about in Greece, etc., did not bow to the idols. They crushed their statues. They treated them with the disdain that, quite frankly, demonic worship deserves. I realize that in this time period, especially, people are trying to reconnect with their ethnic backgrounds. They feel, in a sense, lost, especially in countries like the US, where you have so many different mixed backgrounds. But I won't, I can't bless what I consider to be satanic. Um, I mean, obviously, I realize that is, the liturgist writes, either we are a Disneyland tourist attraction or we have a lineage. And the Hierophants of Eleusis quite likely birthed Christianity. No, the Hierophants of Eleusis did not quite likely birth Christianity. God the Father did. Christ is God. And now this is distasteful to many people. I've realized over time, more and more people find Christ problematic. And I'm going to put it blunt, across every ethnic group in the world and in this country, I have seen a sudden turn of hatred towards Christ, whether it is some form of Hebrew Israelism among African Americans, whether it's some sort of La Raza extremism among Hispanics, whether it's some sort of neo-paganism among Anglos and Europeans. What we're seeing is a turning away from Christ. Again, here we go again. Look at your vestments. You dress like the Hierophant. The Hierophant, I assume you're referring to the tarot card. That particular imagery was a mockery of the priesthood. You say it is possible to love Christ and make peace with our pagan past. The way you make peace with your pagan past is to put it to sleep, which is what Greece did for centuries, for almost 2 millennia, until the past 100 years, which coincide with the rise of ecumenism, which opened the door to paganism. Archaeology. Look, I'm not saying that you can't discover things archaeologically. I don't know, Father, do you want to jump in on this? Because I feel like I'm just being overly offensive. It put simply, this conflict between Christ and the pagan world occurred from the very beginning and is inevitable. I have seen increasingly movements towards paganism. Lycurgus, if you truly want to understand your heritage, and if you'd like to call 2,000 years of Greek history a Disneyland attraction, that is your choice. But you will have to choose between Christ and the multitude of devils that oppose him. And that choice is yours. I pray for you that you choose correctly. But there are many people who, frankly, will not. May God save them somehow from their blindness. Any other questions? Just checking.
I think Death Compromises comment that is
okay.
Very true, right? I think it's interesting. Go ahead.
I think it's interesting that, go ahead. I think it's interesting that many converts came to Orthodoxy by learning the history, yet many reject true Orthodoxy because they don't want to learn church history. Well, yeah, unfortunately, that's true.
Recent history, yeah, they don't really want to look at the 20th century.
Yeah, or if they do, they want to look at it through somebody's manhandled version of it. That
Yeah, and the just your typical layperson. Yeah, I don't want to throw stones too hard because for a lot of us, a lot of people coming into Orthodoxy, just generally, we'll call it broadly Orthodox, right? And we'll just include everyone that claims that title. There's a lot of effort that goes into that, and years of study sometimes, and uh, even rejection from your families. You lose friends, so there's a lot of sacrifice just to get to that point. So when you're received into whatever jurisdiction that might be, and there's sort of a relief, right? And you think you're done, and you don't want to go through that again. So you want to relax and just be. So it's tough. It's tough. And when you start seeing it, then but you got to be honest, right? When you see the heresy right in front of your face, you have to be honest about it. And
that's it. It's confront. You have to ultimately. You're going to have to confront yourself.
yeah,
On that note, like Kurgos wrote, I choose Christ, but I do not reject the wisdom of our ancestors. No, you're wrong. Greece has been Orthodox for almost 2,000 years. So you are rejecting a lot of wisdom from a lot of ancestors to talk about pre-Christian Greece that was pagan and had all you're forgetting 2,000 years of the church. You're spitting on your ancestors. Do not confuse yourself. That's a compromise said, I've mentioned this before in Discord, but Barnes and Nobles in recent years has greatly expanded its pagan and witch literature. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I went to a Barnes and Nobles for the first time. Uh, I hadn't been in Barnes and Nobles for years, and I just something a couple of months ago made me let's go to Barnes and Noble. I don't know why. I thought maybe I had good memories of Barnes and Noble in high school, but then I saw it, and all of a sudden I remembered other parts of my memories that realized they weren't great memories to begin with. And the spirituality section is much worse and much more gay. I hate to say that was true about Barnes and Nobles back then, but it's a lot more true now. LBG LBGTQ spirituality. Um, so yeah, it was pretty bad. So yeah, I agree with you, DTC. Very true. Any thoughts on the recent cutting of theological talks between the Coptic Church and Rome? Um, Not really. I mean, I understand why they would do it, why anyone would do it based on what Rome's doing now. But frankly, I mean, I'm not one to. It's you're talking about two heretical groups from my perspective, and I don't know how to feel about that. It's like the Monophysites stopped talking to Rome because Rome includes Chalcedonians and also gay. Okay, well, how come they weren't able to look over the Chalcedonians until the gay thing? So, um, okay, seems oppressive. I'm sorry. Stopping ecumenism because of homes doesn't change the fact that they still do the same thing through the WCC. This is true. I can't escape that. Then comment on the Gnostics who are not Orthodox. Well, I don't have to. Irenaeus of Lyon did, and he wrote a massive treatise on all of them. So, yeah, I agree. Your blessing. May God bless you. Rome is corrupt. Kufr gonna be kufar. Okay. That's Jeem for everyone who doesn't know. He's Jad now because he wrote a book. I haven't read it yet, but I'm sure it'll be good. Hermes and the Judeo-Christians are misguided. Okay, it came out. It always has to come out eventually. And what I'm referring to is I've seen this with Norse pagans and with Celtic pagans and Greek pagans. It's always the same. You see the word Judeo-Christian. First off, that's a 20th century invention. What you really mean to say, because this is what most of these neo-pagan types say, is you mean we worship a Jew. That's what you want to say. First off, Christ is God, and he was born among the Jewish people. Those things are true. If that is so distasteful to you that even if the truth came from such a mouth, then there's no way to help you because you've chosen to blind yourself. Now you have a choice because God gave to the Greeks, to the Greeks, the first opportunity for repentance. We see in Acts. And for 2,000 years, your ancestors, like Horus, followed this teaching. So for you to reject your grandparents, your great grandparents, the grandparents before them, all of those Greeks you spit on through your paganism, you should turn back from the paganism and repent to God. Go to church, go to confession, repent. Has anybody heard any news of the Moscow Patriarchate being involved in the interreligious temples that are being? Well, they're partially funding it. I know that because these are done by state agencies, but the Moscow Patriarchate plays a role with the state agencies. So yes, that I don't know how closely related they are. I don't know how active. I assume they're at least active in the Christian part. Then let me see here. Germans, don't know what that means. Corpus Hermeticum got deep fried by the Rosetta Stone. Hermetical cultism is disproving garbage. Thank you for that, Jim. The Judeo-Christians are misguided, typing that from a basement. I am not a pagan. Stop trying to sound like one. It's not even real paganism. It's just a 20th century live action role playing kind of thing. I remember in the 1990s having friends who were Wiccans. And, back when that was a really big thing. Now they're trying to go into more full blown paganism. But they, frankly, some of their authors admitted that they just made stuff up. Like they made up a cakes and ale ritual to mock or mimic Christianity. Just crazy things like that. So, you're absolutely right, Reader John. It is, just live action role playing. In making sense of it all, yeah, then stop calling Christians Jews. You're absolutely, I hate to say it, but thank you for that, Chad. Okay, so yeah, unfortunately, I am going to remind just one more time, I hate to stress this, but like Horgos, if you are Greek, you come from a rich Christian Orthodox tradition. Don't throw it away. That would be such a shame. I don't know, Father, did you have anything? No.
No.
I'm sorry if I got a little bit of, but I don't. Okay. I sounded like the dog. All right. Well, we are at the 1 minute 2 point. So, if there are no other questions, I'd like to thank everybody who was watching. I would like to thank everybody who made comments, who had questions, everyone in the chat, whether, there were positive, negative comments. We are grateful. I want to thank Father Antonios most of all for being here. Father, you have a new website coming soon. I don't know if you want to advertise that yet, or if there's other things you wanted to shout out.
Nothing to shout out. No, the website is waiting on me because I dragging my feet and.
Well, God willing, it should be there soon. And if Father Antonios is always on the Discord. Well, not always, but he's available on the Discord. So you can always reach out to him on NFTU. And so, in any case, we'd like to thank you for everyone who was listening, and may God bless and protect all of you. Last comment, Father Seraphim was True Orthodox video should pass 1K views overnight. If you have not gone to Death to Compromise this channel, take a look. It's definitely worth it. And the Father Seraphim was True Orthodox video is fantastic.
It's wonderful. Yes, it was well done.
And,
a lot of work.
With that, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Father, for being here. And you have a great night, everyone. May God bless you. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Good night.
Good night, all.